We're going to talk about brand management today. Just nipped in, so a bit of a conversation around it, the ever-changing landscape of the brand world. Obviously done it for a long time and seen massive changes, not just in the way brands are delivered, but also the makeup of a team that delivers that brand. And I think we're going to kind of open up the discussion of creating consistency, efficiency, long-term relationships, ultimately managing the brand effectively. You obviously deal with a lot of our clients, a lot of prospects. What is it you're seeing at the moment, the kind of conversations you're having with people?
I think the landscape's evolving on a really rapid basis at the moment. It's driven by a policy, by the financial sort of setup of the country and the wider economy, I think, on the whole. And I think that sort of changes how people look at marketing, spend in business generally. Whilst you might find that the larger, web and brand projects historically are easier to get from inception to sign off to delivery, I think it's far the more challenging. I think the budget still exists, but people are far more prudent with how they spend it, and they need to sort of show real value. And ultimately it's a question of just doing the basics right, I think, on its simplest level, isn't it? So it's how you take a brand or a website or whatever you're looking to achieve, and it's how that gets delivered over time. As with anything, I mean, I know we always touch on fitness. If you want to sort of keep fit and healthy, you've got to do that on a regular basis, commit to it, and do it consistently. So, whether it's you're 3 times a week in the High Rocks gym, whether it's, me going out on the bike, doing a weight session, whatever else, it's that consistency of delivery. And it's the same thing in this instance, isn't it? It's consistently, working in and around the framework of sort of brand guidelines, for example. It's consistently looking after a website and ensuring that it keeps up, and it not just delivers regularly, but it evolves over time, because things change. I mean, SEO is a prime example, isn't it? People talking about GEO and how chat influences things, and in essence, it's still exactly the same thing. It's authority and consistency of delivering that authority over time, but it's something that needs to be done on a regular basis. And ultimately, outsourcing that accountability to a third party is a really great way of doing that, because you don't have the challenges of headcount and the associated costs, and you've got the breadth of capabilities we've got here at Dawn. I've been here 9-10 months now, and the output's always second to none, and I think that's the key thing, and people having access to that is a wonderful thing, and it gives people options, because they might come to us and look at a brand piece, but then we can help them in a web capacity or social media management or motion. And I think that's it's a great thing to have as an asset, and also it's not just a case of being reactive. We can come and be proactive, and you can sort of say to clients, well, I looked at this particular element. If your brand currently is quite static, let's say, for example, so we can bring the motion capability in, and I think that's a sort of proactive facet that can be done, not necessarily in a complex way, but on a really simple, actionable way that has real impact on how your business operates, and it shows real value, and it impacts on the bottom line. And I think that's hugely important when margins are tight for everybody. You've got to have a compelling business case, and I think working in a retained way with people, you can demonstrate that very clearly, and that's hugely advantageous.
Yeah, a lot of good reasons there as to why we work in that particular model. We'll have done with clients for 10, 15 years. Yeah. We wanted to move away from the word retain. We don't really like the concept of the word, but in principle, that's what it is. We've called it Outshine over a number of years now, with the philosophy to try and say everything needs to be improved, continual improvement. A brand evolves through life just like a person does, but you need a level of consistency as well, and you need the right skills in place. So the journey I've gone over the years, nearly 30 years in the industry, roughly 22, let's say, actually designing, I knew where I was strong and where I needed support to do other things. And as communication has broadened over time, you need the right skills in the team to be able to get a modern brand to be consistent and create a degree of efficiency. My downfalls or where I'd fall short would be like motion graphics, for example. There's no way I am learning that or doing that throughout my career at all. I know some designers might move into it a little bit and dabble with it, but for me, you need to be specialist in a particular area, focused in on what a brand actually is, the strategy behind the brand, and then how you apply that to an identity. But then a motion designer has carved their craft to say, I fully understand that landscape. Digital designer could argue can actually dig into the complexities of a website and the UX of a website and understand really how your design should be created to be passed on to a developer as well to make the whole project efficient. And so suddenly, as you start to unravel it, you realise that if you're going to manage a brand, you need a hell of a lot of different people with different skills in the modern world to make that effective. And I think sometimes organisations at the moment haven't got into that space, but equally would find that it's very expensive to employ a team of people daily, you know, as a headcount compared to partnering with an agency that's already got those skills in place.
Exactly that. It's like anything, isn't it? It's making a list of things that you can do and outsource the bits that you can't. Ultimately, you know, if you're a small business and you're struggling with accounting, you're going to outsource to an accountant. Oh, you know, you could struggle through and use something like Xero, but ultimately you want to take it to a seasoned professional. It's worth the investment because they'll point out a variety of different things that would ultimately save you money in the long run at the end of the financial year. Conversely, as you say, it's the same principle with design. The landscape's evolved significantly, so there's far more required capability. And you look at sort of agency like Dawn, and actually it's a fairly senior organisation, people that have worked in the industry for a very long time, and to get to that level as an investment for a business would be very significant. And it's that kind of objectivity that's hugely compelling as well, isn't it? So it's the ability to look at something and to find a solution, and to guide and direct, and whether it's consultancy, you know, whether it's design led, whatever it might be, it's that critical eye that comes with collectively many decades of experience that people are investing in, and it's a hugely hugely valuable thing to have as an organisation. The Amazons and the Apples of this world, and they're doing exactly the same thing in principle, aren't they? They're continually working, they're continually striving to keep pushing the envelope of brand, of web, of all of these components, because they understand that if they don't, they'll stagnate and they'll lose out. Now, obviously, we're not operating in the multi-billion-dollar international space, but the principle remains, doesn't it? And I think it's important to look at why big commerce and big business is successful, and emulate the principles in the same way.
Yeah, and for me, you mentioned a few big names there. We sometimes are looking up to bigger names, but we kind of see our value in the kind of the SME space. A company that might be 5-10 years old, where we think we can make the most impact. But I think when you look at the bigger brands, you've got to have some respect for how they manage them, and I think this is the important part. Yes, they might do a refresh every 10 years or so, like a bigger refresh, because things got a little bit out of date or a little bit out of hand through acquisition or whatever it might be. But they're essentially evolving through time. And my passion for, one, having Outshine as a product and being closer to our client ultimately comes back to a comment really my tutor made back in like 1997. Okay. And he said to us in the class, when you leave here and get your first job, make sure you look at every brand you ever work on like looking in the mirror. And we thought, okay. And then he went, because you look in the mirror day to day, you look pretty much the same. And he says, but if you look back 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, you'll notice that your face has changed, your hairstyle's changed, your fashion's changed, and you'll probably mock yourself a little bit, going, oh my God, I can't believe you used to look like that, or you used to have my hair that way. But day to day, you don't really change. He said if you can get a brand early on establish its strategy, what it stands for, a really robust identity, then you've got the right base to actually evolve through time. And you should stay current by doing it, So you just tweak things every so often, which is why it's a daily activity. It's a living, breathing thing, a brand across all the comms that we have in the modern world, which is vast. It needs to be touched on a daily basis to be kept consistent. And he used to reference KitKat as an example. So most people, if I've said the name KitKat, can instantly picture red and white, probably an oval in the middle with the word KitKat on it, and probably think it's never really massively changed. Now, if you got all the wrappers year on year, you'll notice that it has changed, but it's been true to itself, hasn't messed with recipes and the actual product, packaging's essentially the same. And maybe a mixture of those two things makes it one of the most successful bars sold on the planet as well. So I think that's really interesting, because I think people who either own a brand or maybe work on a brand, if you're working on it every day, we find that people start to get bored with their own brand. So they think, oh, we'll freshen it up, we'll change stuff up, we'll mix it up a little bit. But then actually move further away from what they are than they should do. And then people don't recognise it in the same way. And the better brands are very consistent, establish a base for years and years and years, get well known, and then allow yourself to dial up your values, create campaigns and things like that, where you might then be a little bit different from time to time. But you have that bedrock of being recognised as something. And that's ultimately what builds trust and loyalty for people to then go, I'm a fan of that brand and I will stick with that brand.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you mention it as a living, breathing thing.
Yeah.
And so if you compare that to nature and evolution, it's something that evolves through necessity and evolves throughout time for very compelling reasons. It's not changing, a physical attribute, let's say, for example, for, anything other than a good, legitimate reason. And I just think that's a really interesting comparison, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because people, if they're left to their own devices, if they launch a brand or they launch a website, you give them the keys and they, as you say, just sort of go, we're bored, we're going to change it.
Yeah.
Because they feel like changing it. And actually that's the single worst thing 9 times out of 10 that they as a business can do. And having that outsourced resource to sort of rein them in and kind of go, well, actually, let's look at this, let's step back objectively. What's the business case for doing what you're doing? Do we need to do this? It's better to talk ourselves out of a rebrand in certain situations, isn't it? And say, well, actually, you don't need to do this. You're far better off doing a sort of a light retouch. Better still, work on it on a daily basis. What can we improve tomorrow?
Yeah, and we find, don't we, that the clients that I said before, we've worked with 10, 15 years, we're helping them evolve through time and then helping them manage the brand. And obviously people within those organisations come and go as well. Sometimes people want to come in, make a mark, try and change stuff, but not necessarily for the right reasons. So it's part of trying to make decisions for the right reasons, keep people on track. But then there are times where people will come along and say they want to do a rebrand or we want a new website. And on the face of it, we might agree, there were really valid reasons for it, especially if you've got to change the name of your company for some reason. Maybe you've had bad press or the name is holding you back because it's too descriptive. So a name change obviously is a fundamental change. You might keep other things like colours and type and tone of voice and stuff like that, so it still feels true to itself. A lot of stuff's going to have to change in that particular space, and you can't just quickly evolve. You've got to make a dramatic change at some point. Most of your collateral has got to have been changed before you launch it. But then there's other times where isn't necessarily the case, really. A rebrand's on the cards, but there's no reason why you can't do that over a period of time rather than just one big hit. The big hit, where I've just said, when it's required, no problem, you work through it, you hopefully flick on a switch and your new brand arrives out of the blue. But then there's other ways of doing it where you can tweak it over time. And the beauty of doing that means that you can improve something tomorrow, however big or small one might be, and get yourself on a journey to get to the end of that refresh. But it could be done over a period of time. And sometimes a barrier for organisations, maybe the marketing team are the drivers, they want the rebrand, they realise what they've got is out of touch, out of date, inconsistent, but maybe some of the board or CEO doesn't see the value in it or is not willing to give the funds to it. So the barrier can sometimes be the investment.
Sure.
Yeah, which is, I get it, but at the same time, that investment is likely to come back straight away because of all the assets that you've improved. But because of that, we like to then break that down and think, well, if you're going to do a full rebrand, that's fine. But how about we look at the investment and just spread that over a period of time anyway? And then we can do a couple of things, and we can plan for the rebrand over a period of time, but it also allows us to do things tomorrow with the brand they've currently got or the identity that they've got. And that might just pick out a few different things, start improving some of the social content, or maybe there's some automated emails that don't particularly look that great or don't come across that great. We'll just change them, and then you're a little bit closer to where you want to be. Going back to the fitness analogy, it's like if I want to do a marathon, I've never done any running before, I've got to start with,
But it's the only way to approach it. Again, sort of sticking with the fitness thing, Dave Brailsford's marginal gains philosophy. And it's changing these small different components. And they add up to a real impact sort of 1-2% here, few percent there, on a bike. So it's, making it slightly more aero, or it's sort of slightly altering the nutrition for the athletes, or changing the shoe, or a variety of small things. And it's these sort of small marginal gains, and the collective impact is significant. And these things can be done operationally for relatively modest investment. I think that's the key thing, really, isn't it? So it's not an eye-watering sort of massive project that may or may not be necessary, and it's doing it over a protracted period of time, and it's that a more palatable approach that actually could well create far more impact for their organisation.
We live
in the long term anyway.
Live in a digital world. Majority of businesses now, a lot of their comms will be digital. Yeah,
sure.
We still, or collectively, companies still do slightly old-fashioned approaches, like creating PDFs for a digital space, when really a PDF and the way that you go about producing something like that is still historically like a print style to it. Either way, it's highly unlikely it ever gets printed unless someone prints it at home or something like that. And so the amount of print people are producing is less. So the digital asset, the beauty of it, is that you can change it tomorrow.
Yeah.
You can just tweak a small part of it, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
And you can do it quite fast. And you can test it and see whether it actually does improve. And then you can bow back out of it. Whereas years ago, you'd be like, oh, should we print 5,000 brochures? Or do you think we need 5,000? Or is it 3,000? Whichever way, it was always quite a big number.
Yeah.
And then you got the brochures, you either use some of them, or they just sat in a cupboard. But digital landscape's not like that. You can just dive in, change some stuff, and move closer to where you need to be.
And it's Jeff Bezos's two-door theory, or two-way doors. And I think most digital components adhere to that. And essentially what he's saying is, you go through a door and you can easily come back the other way, because you can test it and quantify it and see the return on investment or not. And if it isn't the case, no one gets everything right first time, but you can see empirically in the data whether something's working or not, or where something needs improving. And that, I think, is the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Something like a full rebrand. When I was at a talk the other day at Evolence, they're not our client, but it's interesting to look at third parties in many ways, isn't it? So they're a global multinational, MAN Engineering. They do big diesel engines, and they're looking to pivot and go and essentially reverse all the damage to the ecosystem with their diesel engines and go down a very green route. Now, for them, that's a non-reversible one-way door decision. They want to totally rebrand, totally pivot the way that the business is going. That's a completely different animal altogether, isn't it?
Yeah. Fundamental change. You can't drip feed that, because you'll end up with 2 or 3 fragmented brands in the market at the same time. I think there's always a critical decision, but that's what I like to think we assess on the conversations we have with people. It's the same with, we need a new website. Often you look, and initial thoughts are, yeah, you probably do. It doesn't look particularly great, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's just right, stop, start again. There are opportunities to improve what people have. Even if still we all collectively believe that, yes, it's not built particularly well, or the navigation and the structures are so far removed from what it needs to be, that there's going to be fundamental change, and we all agree a new website is what needs to be done, that's still going to take a while to deliver.
Sure.
So what do we do? Just wait until the new one arrives? Or do you actually work on the current one as well at the same time? Yeah. And that's ultimately what we've tried to create over the years, is to educate people the fact that, there are the big bangs, there's a big rebrand, a big website, but it's a continual improvement that needs to happen, and not just stop because we're waiting for something new, big and shiny. It's like you can still do something with what you've got today and make it better. And that could just make 1-2% difference in whatever that might be. It might be a conversion of a lead on a website, for example, Paul.
Yeah, but if each form converts a few percent better, and if the site's just a bit faster, and if you have a few more keywords indexing on page 1, and so on and so on and so on, and these things aren't, as you say, the big shiny things. And I know that people want to work on the big shiny stuff, because it's sort of, they almost see that as their marketing legacy, maybe, for example. But actually, the day-to-day grind, and whether you call it the fitness analogy or whatever, are doing those things consistently are the ones that actually give you that impact.
Yeah. And
really
Amazon's just gone through a full brand refresh.
Yeah.
And from the bits that I've seen, for me, I've heard other people talk about, for me, looks good. nice and simple, really clean approach to it, and work that was desperately needed to be done.
Yeah.
I'd said for years Amazon was leaving a trail of crap behind itself. Obviously, most people would go, why would they care? Still got billions. But there is a point in time where you look and go, oh my God, we've got like 40 or 50 logos in play. None of them have got any structure. None of them make much sense. Got different colours creeping in left, right and centre. Over time, a couple of things that are happening, slightly damaging your own brand, even though they are very successful and making billions. But you believe And then you've also, I think this is the hidden part of mismanagement of, imagine having to manage all of those different logos and identities and colours and things like that, and trying to make decisions within the marketing team to go, all right, well, Prime's now blue, but Amazon generally is orange, and AWS is an acronym, not the name Amazon. And the list goes on and on and on. And then suddenly you've got people having to create content for all of those different things and somehow communicate that effectively. And it ends up getting to a point where it just doesn't work. No. Amazon will carry on trading like they have been, and then eventually this new brand gets launched, and then there's a massive rollout. So for ages, that is going to take a long time to embed itself into the landscape of Amazon, because it's so far reaching. But it's trying to get to a point where we can avoid that, and it can be done. Amazon, Apple, every single company on this planet has made the same mistakes. There's no doubt about that. So I'm not saying mistakes don't happen over time, because different people manage the brand, or maybe it's an authority in an organisation where if someone just says, I want this, everyone else bows down to it, and instead of maybe standing up for it. But there are, whether people like it or not, rules in play when it comes to the brand landscape. And they can't be ignored. You need to know what brand architecture you're in. You need to know that early on so you can manage your brand effectively. You need to know naming conventions, both for sub-brands and products. There is a number of rules to follow to try and manage the things that happen to the likes of Amazon not happening to your own organisation. And again, this is where years of experience comes into play. And I find that a lot of organisations just don't necessarily have that brand layer. So a typical structure might be sales director, marketing director, finance director, HR director, CEO, that type of structure. Brand as a word is very much put to the marketing team. Because brand equals visual identity and logo to a lot of people. And for me, it could be further from the truth. The brand is the whole of the organisation, every business decision it makes. If a lot of organisations are missing that, very rarely see necessarily a brand director or creative director sat on the board of an organisation, for example, then working with people that have got years of experience in this space and can help you navigate the world of brand becomes even more important.
It's pivotal. And again, the beauty of an Outshine agreement is you've got access to that capability as well, haven't you? So whether it's having a workshop set up or some consultancy sessions to educate that a business's colleagues, the C-suite of that organisation, to actually say, well, this is incredibly important because, they understand it properly. And once they understand it and they buy into it and see the value in it, it makes everyone's life a lot easier. So, I think it's massively important. And that, it's not a question of output necessarily either, is it? It's
also about collectively supporting each other and learning from each other. I'll always say to clients, you in your organisation and anyone I deal with should know your product services better than we do. And over time, we'll get to know them well too. But at the start, you should know things that you've done before, what was a success, what was not a success, what kind of products or services you actually offer, what's the standard that you set them at, what's the future hold, what new products are likely to come, what services are you changing. They'll know what's going on in the organisation from a day-to-day perspective. But you can also get bogged down with that, and working with ourselves, we can see it from a different perspective, but we can bring our knowledge from a brand perspective, brand strategy perspective, web development, design, motion graphics, all of those skills that people don't have. And also speak to people at the highest level within the organisation, because as I said, brand is the top dog here, that is the organisation. And very few companies have that knowledge in-house. So it gives us an opportunity to work together. And also when we work with our clients, you want to help pass on your own knowledge as well. And when I'm saying training, that should be part of a close-knit relationship. And if you can impart some knowledge to other people within an organisation, or more junior people coming through in the ranks of your clients and stuff like that, and get them off to a good start, what added value that is to your organisation.
I think it's absolutely pivotal, isn't it? And I think it's that business consultant level, and it's sort of that, you know, objectivity that we can give through, as I say, many decades of experience. And you can look at something critically and sort of say, well, objectively, that isn't right.
Yeah.
And these are the reasons why it isn't right. But actually, it's a really simple solution to fix it. I mean, at simplest level, you look at something like SolarTube, for example, and you know, you make a small change to the form, and it has an exponential change in the results. And again, that's replicated across the board, and the impact to them for a really modest investment was hugely significant.
Yeah, and that's a prime example, isn't it, of, you know, the conversations with them was never about the brand or a full website, because just wasn't on the cards at the time.
No.
Nor are you sometimes in a situation as an agency to convince people that's what they need to do. Because sometimes we might all think, we could probably do with your brand being freshened up and your website could be a bit better. But at the time, that wasn't the issue. The issue was that they weren't getting enough inquiries, ultimately.
Yeah.
But they were investing in SEO and pay-per-click when we first met them with someone else, driving traffic to a website. But no one had ever really looked at whether the site was working or converting in the right way. And so, you know, a few days' work, essentially, from a design and development perspective, a big uplift in the conversion makes a big difference to the bottom line.
Huge.
And that's what we should be looking at a lot of the time, collectively, I mean. Yeah,
It should be a collaborative approach. Yeah. You know, it's working with people and it's finding these small things, because they're only obvious when they get pointed out.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, if you're looking at a website, your own website day to day, you can't see the wood for the trees. Yeah. You're looking at it, you know, oh, well, there's nothing wrong with it. It's exactly the same thing. Again, it's like your tutor's analogy about looking yourself in the face. I know it was a brand thing, but it's the same for website, isn't it? You don't see the things that aren't quite right with it. You don't look into in detail things that aren't performing quite right. You kind of go, well, that's all right. You know, performance is okay. Well, it's not. And actually, the improvement has a huge impact on performance, on SEO rankings and conversions and everything else. And actually, again, that objectivity is hugely important, and people forget about it.
Yeah, we had an opportunity, I think, last year at some point where it was a rebrand that was ultimately being requested, and part of the process to see whether we could work with them, we took it upon ourselves to actually become a customer beforehand. They didn't know we were doing it, but it makes sense. It was a B2B business. We could buy their product. So as a business owner, I would be the decision maker. So I thought, okay, well, I will Google what they're putting out there, obviously find them on purpose because I want to go through to the next step, read the snippet of what they're saying on the search, click through to the website, go through the process of reading what it is that they're offering me, fill out a form, see whether I get an instant response, an automated email or not, and then what is the follow-up after that? How did the sales team deal with me, and so forth. And you went through the process and uncovered errors along the way, some inconsistency. At one point I was communicated by 2 or 3 different companies with different logos on the material, which obviously
really confusing.
It makes me quite confused, but also like a little bit of lack of trust now. Like, I don't know who's going to be dealing with me. Someone would follow up with a call afterwards, but it was quite confused. Instead of looking at the rebrand at the time, we tried to put recommendations forward to say, I won't do it at the moment, to be quite honest. Fix
the bits that
things
fundamentally wrong.
We've not collectively looked at properly. Let's get them working correctly, and they're quick wins. You know, you can look at the website, you can rewrite some of the copy, you can make sure you're getting your key points across. You make sure your form is well designed, it's working on mobile, and you've maybe removed a few fields as well just to get the form filled out a little bit quicker. Then review the email that actually comes back, which very few people do. Once it's been an automation, it's done, isn't it? People forget to actually look at that journey. What's it saying in that email, and what are you promising in that email as the next step after that? All that stuff really could be changed within a matter of a week and be better for it. So if you're still getting the same amount of traffic to your website, let's say it's 100 per month, but you've improved this and the conversion rate goes up.
It's a fairly straightforward thing, isn't it?
So get it working, and then you can go back and say, okay, we still believe that we're not positioned effectively, or we're looking a little bit dated, or maybe we've made a couple of acquisitions and it all needs to, be aligned. Do that when you've got a few things working.
But again, though, it's not just fixing it and forgetting about it either, is it? So you fix a form, and it's not, once it's done once, that's the end of it. You need to ensure that performs consistently over time. And you look at best practice, you look at how things change, because if that form was performing well 2 years ago, chances are it isn't performing anywhere near as well now. So that always needs moving on and just keep consistently moving the needle across everything. And if you make those sort of small improvements across the board with an organisation that you can hold accountable for it, who's also coming to you with some proactive ideas, then that's a phenomenal relationship, really, isn't it? Because it's a tangible impact to your business.
Yeah. And that, for us, that's what the Outshine offer is, ultimately. It's about continual improvement. It's about return on investment. It's about managing a brand effectively, making things better as you go along that particular journey. And you mentioned earlier, relatively cost-effective approach to doing it. We are in a current climate where things are increasing in price. Obviously, earlier in the year, NI went up. Overheads for businesses have increased. Having people within your team, which might be deemed a luxury by some people. Some leaders might think, marketing or creative department and stuff like that, areas where, do I need to cut back or not? I would never agree with that.
No.
And I think communicating with people and your customers is quite a good idea. But we're trying to create a model with Outshine to say, well, it can be a really strong alternative where you don't have the overhead, you're committing to a certain amount per month, we're going to improve your brand and move it forward, and you can stop and start it whenever you want.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? There's no compliance issues, no HR, there's no, problems with the lead designer going and getting drunk on a night out and that kind of stuff. You've got an organisation with a real breadth of capability that's truly accountable, and you can work with them on a short-term basis, but actually, we've found that most of the people that we've signed up to Outshine, or all of them, have stayed with us very long term. Far outperforming the industry average, because they get really good results. We get on well with them. And it's sort of something that essentially we're part of the team. I think that's a lovely thing to have.
And I think, again, having been in the industry for such a long time, and you'll see posts on LinkedIn, I think I saw one last week as well, where people are calling out like the job description of a designer, a graphic designer. We're looking for an in-house designer who can design for web, do motion graphics, maybe a bit of SEO, can maybe develop a web page. And I know, I've done it long enough to know that's an impossibility. Someone might be able to do bits of all of those things, but most of them will be average. You've got to create a team that has distinct skill sets, very proficient in what they do. It's multi-layered. It's not just about what it is you're trying to achieve. You've got methods, philosophies, you've got software, all things that are really quite complex and quite different. And I've always tried to bring both creators and developers into the agencies that I've ran because they're good at that thing that they do. But
you need a specialist. Because they're specialist skills, and we can all find a jack of all trade, but ultimately they're going to be suboptimal at certain things that, if done right, would be give you a far better return as a business, and that's the thing fundamentally, isn't it? So if they do a half-assed job at conversion or UI or UX or brand or whatever it might be, what are you doing? There's no point. This is the first touch point that your prospective clients will have, and if that isn't hitting a certain threshold, then it's not a great start to the relationship, is it? It's something that can and should be improved, and it's an easy thing to achieve.